Good morning, everybody. How are you all today? I hope you're well. I hope you're getting excited about the prospect of spring, which is now only 2 weeks away, officially, according to the calendar. Who knows what the weather might do though in that time. Just to say, if during this video today you can hear sort of howling, clattering noises, it's because we've got a real hoolie blowing outside today. We've got winds about 50, 60 miles an hour, and there's a big gust there. And the way the wind is coming today, where I am in the back of my flat and the next building beyond me, it's quite narrow, so the wind is being funneled and it's hitting my little dormer where my kitchen window is. So sorry about any rattling and clattering in the background. It's really creaking quite a lot. Anyway, today is all about seed sowing. Today I'm going to be doing my tomatoes and my celery. And for some reason, this is the point each year where I really feel the year is starting. It's always something to do with sowing the tomato seeds. I suppose it's partly because in the past, before I started growing peppers and celeriac and things like that, this was always the first seed I ever put in. And tomatoes are one of my absolute favourite things to grow. I love being involved in that sort of daily care with them all through the summer. I love the smell of them as I'm harvesting or caring for them. Just everything about tomatoes I love. And of course, for my diet and my food needs, it's a really important plant for me to grow. In relatively little space, I can get a mass of food. So hurrah for the tomatoes. Now, this year, for some reason, well, not for some reason, I know the reason why, I'm more nervous than ever with my sowings. Every year, whenever I sow anything, I'm just reaching for my water. Whenever I sow anything, I always, I don't know, I was talking about it, I think, when I was planting the celeriac, excuse me a second, that every time I sow something, I suddenly have this massive wave of self-doubt, which is silly because based on previous years, things tend to work out okay in the end. But last year, the tomatoes really were an issue. I did everything exactly the way I've done it for years. And my little tomatoes would come up, they'd have their seed leaves, no true leaves, and then they just stopped. They would not grow. And I had issues across the board with all the sowings I'd done, those initial sowings. So I came to the conclusion that I think I'd had just a bad batch of compost. There were some things which just didn't germinate at all. And then when I did second sowings, they did germinate, so I know the seed was viable. So I wonder if there was some sort of, I don't know, herbicide had been used on plants which had then ended up in the compost, which then, I don't know, I can only speculate, but because of that total disaster last year, I'm really nervous this year. And just while I'm on that subject, I just want to reiterate how grateful I am to the community that I garden within, because I think there must have been, I think there were 4 or 5 of the other women in the end gave me some of their spare tomato plants. In the end, some of mine came good too, but of course I wasn't to know that at that stage. All I remember was this bunch of my women friends down on the allotments gave me a load of their spare plants. They completely saved the day. Yay, hurrah for communities. So, in terms of, I will get sowing in a second, but just in terms of timing, so where are we today? What is the date? It is the 10th of March today. You probably won't see this until about the 17th though, because I've got a couple of videos to come out before then. But yes, it's the 10th of March today. Looking back in my notes from previous years, I've always sown them between the 10th and 20th of March, thereabouts. And I'm basing that on projecting forward to think about when I will get to plant them out. So the tomatoes, they're quite a tender little plant, and they generally like the temperature to be a consistent 8 degrees centigrade or over. Now, quite often, even in April, I need to turn the computer off, but I can't because I've got something working on there. Even in April, we can quite often have days in the high teens, sometimes even into the 20s, but of course it's the nighttime temperatures. So for me, on my site, which is quite a protected little microenvironment, I generally find that around the end of May, beginning of June, that's about the time that I can plant out. So then I work backwards, sort of 8 to 10 weeks. It will take the tomatoes probably a week or so to germinate. What will happen is for about 6 weeks they'll be in my flat on windowsills growing away quite happily, and then from week 6 to 8 I move them out of the flat and they'll stay within the building, but it's not part of my flat, so there's no central heating, not that I would have the central heating on now anyway, but it's generally cooler, there's not body activity and body warmth, etc, etc. So they'll have a couple of weeks just outside the flat, just starting to harden off a little bit, and then finally they'll have up to a couple of weeks in the cold frame down at the garden to finish hardening off before I plant out. If by the time I get to the garden to harden them, if within sort of 3 or 4 or 5 days of them being down there and we're getting great weather, good nighttime temperatures, I might even plant them out after, like I say, after a few days. But anyway, so that's how I work out when I do all of my sowings, and it's the same for literally all of my indoor sowings. I'm always thinking backwards from the moment I plant them out. So we've got those stages: planting out, hardening off, soft hardening off in the cold frame, a soft hardening off at home but outside the flat, and then all the time they need to grow indoors. So yay, we're beginning at last. Wow. Sorry for anybody who's not able to start yet. Some of you have still got snow, crazy. Anyway, I'm dead excited, so I'm going to get on. First of all, I'm going to do a really, really quick recap of my paper pot making, because I'll be using some paper pots today. So let's have a quick make of a paper pot. I think by now quite a few of you have got your own paper pot makers. Having the actual paper pot maker does make it easier, but if you haven't got one of these, you could just use a small bottle. I was thinking I could actually even use my water bottle. It's not that much fatter, you get a bigger pot. But I just thought I'd quickly recap this so that if you've just bought a paper pot maker and you've not used it, or you're still thinking about it, I'll show you, and hopefully by showing you I can reassure you that it's a fantastic investment. They do cost, if you get what you want to find is a wood certified pot maker, so you know that this is being made from wood, from a managed woodland, in other words, where trees are being cut down to make this, more trees are being planted. So these ones, I think this was about £10. I've seen them as cheap as a couple of quid, imported from China, but they're not managed forests, or they don't have any management certification with them. So please, if you are going to buy one, please think about the impact it's having somewhere else and try to invest in ones that are certified. Anyway, so it's dead simple, comes in 2 parts, this base and then the roller. Really, really simple. Strips of newspaper. And the great thing about this, of course, is after that initial investment of the paper pot maker, it's the rest of it is free. These newspapers, and I'm sure many towns and cities have them, are free at the railway stations in the morning. Just have a look in your area. Sometimes estate agents have piles and piles of free newspapers outside their properties as well. So you've rolled it up, you've got this bit hanging over the end. Very simply, tuck it in and over. And then with the base, you just sort of slot the base on and then give it a good scrudge around. Twist and slide out your roller. And you can see how it sort of just helps to tuck the end in and keep it sturdy. So there you go, you've got a free little pot. And one of the reasons I love these, especially for the things like celery and celeriac, they are such fine, teeny tiny, tiddly little seedlings that where with a pot you might sort of tip the pot out to get your seedlings out, you would absolutely damage your celery and celeriac. So what I do is the pot obviously gets quite soggy from where it's being watered. I simply snip down the side and then I can just sort of fold the whole thing out, so I don't have to touch the seeds at all. The whole thing just sort of folds open and then I can gently tease out my various seedlings from it. Okay, paper pot made, let's get doing some sowing. I'm just using multi-purpose compost. There's so many big chunks in it, it's really infuriating. It's one of those jobs where once I started it, I think I'd have been better off. This is a big sack I've got down at the allotment, and I think I would have been better off whilst I was down there sifting it before I brought a smaller bag of it home. Oh, it is really annoying. I don't know what you guys think, but I just feel that, I don't know, compost seems to be getting worse and worse each year. I was using some the other day and I was pulling out loads of plastic from it, for heaven's sakes. Oh well, never mind. And the other thing, I sort of seem to forget every year when I'm doing my seed sowing is how long it takes to fill up every single little pot to get it ready to have its seed in. Oh my goodness, but you know, it's one of those lovely jobs, isn't it? It's, I was going to say, it's a quiet Sunday. It'd be quiet apart from that howling gale. It's one of those lovely jobs to just get lost in, have your mindful moment, don't rush it, don't be thinking of anything else. Just enjoy it. I'm just, oops, there's another lump. I'm just getting the compost in and then giving it a little bit of a tamp down so it's ready to receive the seed and not full of air. And in a minute I'll actually be ready to do some sowing. Oh, the lovely prep time. Right, let's get on with some sowing. I'm going to start. This tray is going to be my lovely gardener's delight. Anyone who's been following my videos over the last couple of years will know, whoopsie, I was ripping the packet, will know just how much I love the gardener's delight. They are prolific. They are a cordon type. So with good support, this is my saved seed from last year. Yeah, so with good support, you can, if you're good about tying them in, snipping out side shoots, you can end up with plants sort of 6-7 feet tall. And like I say, that then gives you masses and masses of produce from a relatively small space. I would like to have a double row of 8, so 16 of these plants. So I'm actually, oops, that's a bit too many in there. I'm going to be sowing about 24 of them in the hopes that 24 will give me 16 good little plants. And of course, if they all do well, fingers crossed, then I'll have some to give away if anyone has a disaster this year like I had last year. This year as well, well, it was tricky with the things that didn't germinate. Ideally I would have liked to have gotten back to them and resown sooner, but when things can take up to 3 weeks to germinate, you just don't know whether they're being slow or whether it's bad compost. But I'm definitely keeping a closer eye on all my seed starts this year, and I will, if necessary, just do everything again later on. Not too much compost to cover them. They do need the light to help sort of stimulate them at this time to get going. So light, warmth, moisture. This compost I'm using is good and moist, so I probably won't need to water them even. I may give them a little sprinkle. I will, just to begin with, I will use a propagator cover on these. They probably won't need it for just tamping down again. Sorry, I should say what I'm doing. Just so there's good contact with the soil. Yeah, they probably won't need the propagator lids for very long, and in fact I don't have enough propagator lids for all of them, so I will save the propagator lid for these, which are my absolute hero favourites. What have we got? Oops, a daisy. I can't write on there. It is G's D 10th of the 3rd. Label, label, label. Fabulous. So that's the Gardener's Delight done. Let's just pop on the floor for a minute. Oh, it's always that thing of space, isn't it? Sorry, excuse me. I'm then going to do, I'll do this in a minute when I've stopped speaking to you guys. I'm then going to do my Rose de Berne, which is the tomato that came home with me from France in 2017, saved the seeds, planted them in 2018. They looked like they were going to be a disaster, and then they came good because we had such a long season because of that drought. That it meant we just didn't get blight last year, so I was able to harvest and eat some, lovely, but more importantly harvest and save. So I'm going to do 9, 10, 11 of those in the hope that I can get 8. And then I've got my Petit Pois Rouge. I'm just going to do 7 of those, though again they were really, really prolific. I'm only going to want about 4 plants from that. So again, if they all come good, that's stuff to give away to other folk, isn't it? So I'm going to do the celery now. Obviously I don't need all of these for celery, but then I was going through my seeds and I remember that someone had very kindly sent me a packet of Chadwick cherry, which was a tomato I did it for the first time about 4 years ago. Really enjoyed it. It's really quite a small cherry, so in terms of my storing of my harvest, it was an absolute pain in the backside for bottling because they're so small and fiddly, but they're a beautiful salad tomato to have fresh. I did have saved seed, of my own saved seed, a couple of years ago, which I sowed last year, but they all failed completely in that horrid compost, so I was really glad to be given a packet. Now, because it's just for eating fresh rather than storing, I'm only going to have probably 4 of these plants to go on the end of the row of the 4 Pois de Rouge. So we're hoping in the end to end up with 4 rows, each with 8 plants in. That will give me 32 tomato plants, which over the years I've worked out that's pretty much the perfect amount for me to give me enough to obviously enjoy a few fresh, but more importantly to have enough to bottle to last a year. Whenever I talk about bottling tomatoes, I'm talking about bottling and freezing because I do both. I'm just going to get rid of this. You see on this opening, here's a little hint and tip. This the opening of the packet here where it's been stuck down is really sticky, so I'm going to get rid of that, because otherwise, as I try to trickle out my seed, they're all going to get stuck to it. Yeah, so I'm often asked about how many plants to grow in order to get the harvest I need to keep me going for a year. Honestly, it's a bit of trial and error, and what it always boils down to with any of these things is, what do you like to eat? What does your family eat? How much of it do you eat? So, for example, with tomatoes, they form the basis of so many meals I make. They're one of my priority crops. Beans, I eat beans almost every single day. They're going to be a priority crop. So if you're just starting out and you're wondering how many of what to plant, just experiment. Keep notes, experiment, and if you know that you really love a particular kind of veg, plant loads more of it than other stuff that you maybe eat less frequently. Okay, so as you can see, oh, I love it. Dirty hands love it. It's a really, really, really fine seed. I mean, it's absurdly fine. So I try not to be too heavy-handed with it, because when you come to pricking out, they really do get quite in a tangle snangle. Is that a word, snangle? So I'm going to do a sprinkle of approximately, very approximately, 10 seeds in each little pot. So that, and then I'm going to do, oh, that was way more than 10. I'm going to do 16 pots, so in theory I could have 160 seedlings. So the thing about, obviously I can say about pricking out how fiddly they are. In theory, if I've got 10 in each pot, 4, 16, that's 160 little seedlings to come up. I obviously don't need 160. 60 would probably do me fine. But in the process of pricking them out, because when they come up, they've got all their sort of little fine celery-like leaves that they all kind of mesh and get tangled in with each other. So as you are teasing them out, invariably there are some that you're going to lose as you just tease them out. So from each pot, hopefully I'll get 4 or 5 decent little seedlings to prick out. All I'm doing is I'm just firming them, giving them contact with the soil, good contact with the soil, but I'm not going to cover them. They're such fine little seeds, and the very first time I grew them, I think I was mentioning this when I was doing the Celery video too, the first time I grew them I took advice, and the advice I had was, don't cover the seed. So I haven't, and I don't, and it seems to work grand. So these, actually, you know, I've only got that one propagator lid. Thinking about it, I'm going to give it to the propagator lid to the celery, because they will need a longer period of consistent warmth to germinate. Tomatoes generally, they'll do their own thing, won't they? They're pretty hard not to grow, says she who failed miserably last year. So yeah, I think I'm going to give the propagator lid to the celery. So there we have it. The season, for me at least, is officially underway. Oh my goodness. Like I was saying right back at the beginning, I'm going to itch my nose with, I've got newsprint, I've got dirt on my hands. I love it. I love being dirty. Dirt to me is a sign of fun and a good time. Like I was saying right back at the beginning, one of the beauties of sowing seeds is every time we sow a seed, we're sowing a bit of hope, a bit of optimism, a bit of excitement. And one can't help but think of last summer, of how all these plants were last summer. And just remembering, sorry, I've got a proper itchy schnozzle, just remembering that, I mean, it was such a long, hot summer. It was too hot at times, not complaining, but all those beautiful summer evenings, just wandering through the garden, picking food, eating it there and then in the garden. Some of it managed to get home and make a lovely lunch the next day, but it's just lovely. So this afternoon, it's now afternoon, my mind is turning towards the summer and imagining how, I'm just reveling in it, absolutely reveling in it. So I need to shut up with you guys now because I need to just finish off the last of these tomato seeds. But hopefully most of you are now starting to almost be underway. I know some of you start really early under lights, what have you. But for those of you who garden like me and we're not using lights and heat and all that kind of stuff, it's around about now that we're starting to do the big sowings. This is it for today, and for the next couple of weeks there'll be no more sowings. Beginning of April, that's when I'll be doing all of my squash, cucumbers, achocha, birdhouse gourd, loofah. It's that whole kind of squash gourd family that I'll be starting at the beginning of April. Yay! So in the meantime, I can get back to the garden and start to think about which beds need to be got sorted. So the first one will be the potato beds. That's the next big job. So that's probably where I'll see you next. I'll probably see you in the potato bed. So until then, I shall say cheerio to you. Happy seed starting. Happy building of excitement for spring. And I hope most of you are beginning to see signs of spring by now. I'll see you all again really soon, I hope. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves.